Hello guys, this is Anusha and today we'll be discussing the critical path method. If you're preparing for PMP exam, you can expect at least one question from this topic or maybe more than that. So let's start and understand what exactly is a critical path method. So in a nutshell, a critical path method is powerful but basically a simple technique for analyzing, planning, and scheduling large and complex projects. In essence, the tool provides a means of determining which job or activities of the many that comprises a project are critical in their effect and how best to schedule all jobs in the project in order to meet a target date at minimum cost. So basically, let's go and dig deeper as to what a critical path method is. According to PMBOK, a critical path method is a technique where you identify tasks that are necessary for project's completion and determine scheduling flexibilities. It is also the longest sequence of activities that must be finished on time in order for the entire project to be completed. So, in short, any delays in critical task will delay the rest of the project. So, critical path method revolves around discovering the most important task in the project timeline, identifying task dependencies, and calculating task durations. Let's dig deeper with an example of how do we really figure out what is the critical path of a project. So as you can see, there is an example which is there on your screen. The objective of the question on the screen is to determine the critical path based on the information available, like activity, immediate predecessor, and duration, which in this case we will take as months. First, let's analyze the activities and their immediate predecessor. Like activities A, B, and C don't have any immediate predecessor. This means that each of them will have individual arcs connecting to them. First, we'll draw nodes 1, which is the starting point. And second, we will add the activities to the arc along with the duration, like this. We will have to also keep in mind that A acts as the immediate predecessor for both E and F. Similarly, let's draw the arcs for nodes B and C. Now, before we can draw the nodes for activity D, a quick look at the table will tell us that it is preceded by activity B, and that a combination of activities C and D act as immediate predecessor for activities H and J. This means that both activities C and D have to connect at some point. That's why we will be drawing an arc from event 3 and 4 in the next slide. So now that we have completed A, B, C of the critical path method, let's take a look at the activity D and E. So now here you can see that we have drawn the activity D as well. Now looking at to the activity E. Activity E is preceded by activity A and acts as the immediate predecessor for activity J. Since this is an independent activity, we will be able to draw an arc like this. Now, if we look at activity F, it's preceded by activity A, and a combination of F, G, and H act as immediate predecessor for the activities K and L. So let's wait before we take it up. Instead, Let's shift our attention to activity G. It's preceded by B as shown in the previous slide. So we'll draw it like this. So as you can see, E and G both are independent and are not interrelated. Now, let's take a look at activity H. It is preceded by both C and D and will act as the immediate predecessor for K and L, along with F and G. So we can connect node 4 and 6 like this. Now that we have done that, let's go back to activity F. Now that we know where activities G and H connect to, we can combine nodes 2 and 6, fulfilling the conditions required for activity K and L. So now the network diagram looks like this. You just have to remember the table in mind and we will proceed with the other network diagram. Following this, we have an activity I. The activity I is preceded by activities C and D. It also acts as an immediate predecessor for activity M. Since it's an independent activity, we can draw it like this. Let's go to the activity K after this. Now here in activity K, we can see that it is preceded by F, G and H. It also acts as an immediate predecessor for activity N. So we will connect nodes 6 and 8 like this. Next, let's continue with activity L. Once we have connected the nodes 8 and 6, the network diagram is going to look like this. Next, let's continue with activity L. The table now shows in the previous slide that L, M and N don't act as immediate predecessor for any other activity. Hence, it can be assumed that it will connect to the final node. So L is preceded by activities F, G and H. The arc can be drawn like this. So we will now go to the activity M. The activity is preceded by activity I. Similarly, we can connect an arc from node 8 to 9 for activity N, like this. So now, looking at this diagram, our network diagram is complete. So now once the network diagram is complete, we will look into finding the critical path. For this, we will need to find two values. Earliest start time, which is ES on the screen, and latest completion time, which is LC. So the process of determining the ES for all events is called a forward pass, while the process for determining the LC for all the events is called as backward pass. Let's get into the forward pass. For this, first we will need to create boxes at all nodes. These are then divided into two. The lower half of the box represents the earliest start time of the node, while the upper half represents the latest completion time. Now, when simplified, the earliest start time for the second node, which is the head node, is the maximum of the combination of the earliest start time of the tail node and the duration between the two nodes. So for node 1, the earliest start time is always 0, as shown in the figure. And for node 2, it would be early start of node 2 is equals to 0, which is the earliest start time for node 1 plus 3, That is the duration between 1 and 2, which is equals to 3 and so on. I'm just going to repeat this formula again. So the early start for node 2 is equals to 0, which is the earliest start time for node 1, plus 3, which is the duration between node 1 and node 2. So when you add 0 plus 3 is equals to 3. And like that, the forward pass is complete. Now for the second part of the critical path method, let's take up the backward pass. For that, we will be using the formula, which is the latest completion time of the tail node is equals to the latest completion time of the head node minus the distance between the two. So we have to start the backward pass from the final node, which is node number 9. You just have to remember the formula of backward pass, which is the latest completion time of the head node minus the distance between the two. So the latest completion for this node will always be equals to its ES. So the latest completion for node 9 is equals to 27. So by doing forward pass and backward pass and calculating LC and ES, we have figured out a critical path for a particular project. So as you can see on the screen, the critical path here is starting from node 1, goes to node 3, then to 4, then to 6, then to 8, and then to 9. So this is how we figure out the critical path of a project. Now that we have understood what exactly is the critical path and how to calculate the critical path of a project, let's see what are the benefits of the critical path method. So to start with, the first one is it reduces delays. So the critical path method helps identify the most important sequence of tasks in a project. Managers can use this information to reduce delays by optimizing the work along the critical path. The second benefit is it visualizes dependencies. So the CPM depends on listing all tasks associated with the project and their dependencies. The chart thus created can help you visualize all dependencies and prioritize tasks accordingly. Another benefit of critical path method is it improves the organization. So basically in complex projects, the CPM helps break down deliverables into sequence and sequence into task. This, along with the focus on visualizing dependencies, mapping constraints, and defining the critical path of tasks, drastically improve project organization. Another benefit of critical path method is it optimizes efficiency. By mapping the critical path, project managers get a better idea of important tasks in the project. They can use this information to allocate resources from the project more efficiently, adding, removing resources depending on the task importance. The last benefit of the critical path method is that it helps in calculation of float. Float, as we will learn in different slides, defines how much a task can be delayed without impacting the project schedule. This is an important part of the critical path method. Calculating the float can help you distribute resources more effectively. Now that we have understood the benefits of critical path, let's see how to find the critical path. What all steps you need to fulfill to figure out what a critical path of a project is. So finding the critical path involves looking at the duration of critical and non-critical tasks. So basically you will see a breakdown of steps here. So to start with, the first one is it lists activities. So use a work breakdown structure to list all the project activities or tasks required to produce the deliverables. The list of activities in the work breakdown structure serve as the foundation for the rest of the CPM. Second step is you identify dependencies. Based on your work breakdown structure, determine the tasks that are dependent on one another. This will also help you identify any work that can be done in parallel with other tasks. The third step is you need to create a network diagram for the task. So the next step is to turn the work breakdown structure into a network diagram, which is a flow chart displaying the activities. So basically create a box for each task and use arrows to depict task dependencies. The fourth step is estimate each task duration. To calculate the critical path, the longest sequence of critical tasks, you first need to estimate the duration of each activity. And to estimate the duration, you can try making educated guesses based on experience and knowledge. You can also estimate based on previous project data, or you can also estimate based on industry standards. Fifth step to this is find the critical path based on longest sequence. As I explained in the previous slides, you have to figure out the longest sequence and that's your critical path. And sixth is calculate the total float. That is it about the critical path method. I hope you enjoyed the video. For any questions or queries, please feel free to email us at info@techcanvass.com. You can also visit us at www.techcanvass.com or you can give us a call at +91 93 255 66777. Thank you.